basically, I looked at every one of the songs that I approached back then from the drum kit. I would map out like an album by saying these are like the 12 or 13 drum kits that are going to make the album regardless of whatever's around them. And that's kind of how I went in every session. Barely any song I ever made would have had like the bass line and the chords already mapped out, and where I would make a beat underneath it. Drums were always, and then it just became like the norm when Curtis would come to the studio. It just wasn't like, what are we going to work on? It was like, what drums do you have? And I read the other day that, or my dad was telling me the other day that Billy Joel approaches almost all of his songs from other people's percussion section. So he would hear a percussion section and then like mimic it in his own way, whatever he sounds, and then create a song around it. And like that's kind of how I did it a little bit for some songs growing up. So the first album was 6 songs. First song was recorded at Seattle University. We kind of broke in there in the middle of the night and used their recording studio. I was with James Little, who's all over my first couple albums. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say his name, but I was with a person who had access back then to the studios at night, so we kind of went in with a female that we had met earlier night at the club. This is 1995, folks. And we just broke into Seattle University, and they sang "Time Is Changing." That was the first song, and frankly, I can't even remember how I had the beat. Maybe a DAT or something, and we just recorded to the beat. But yeah, those were that was kind of like my approach to all of the albums after that. The drum sounds inspired me to take the song further, so that's what we did. And I worked at a music store like after I made the first album, so I started working at a music store, Musician's Friend, when it was a catalog, but then they started to open up stores, and I worked in the digital department there, and I used to just rip every drum sound from every keyboard and every module, like all like the first Planet Fats and all that. Like I didn't need to buy any of that because I would just sample all of it, you know. and frankly, when I first started wanting to do music, I really thought I was going to be a sampler producer. But frankly, like when I went to start using more of the high-end samplers, I couldn't get stuff to truncate properly, and like an abrupt truncate. Like that was just not the hit back then. If you had a loop, like it was, who could make that motherfucker seamless? So I started sampling earlier with that Gemini DJ sampler, which was, I don't know, it was 8-bit, but like you just couldn't make a bad scene. It just like you could just like blind it and just, you know, bat, and it would just loop perfectly. So that was like with a 4-track in that. It's just kind of how I got started, like the beats. But once I got the ESI 32, and like the night I'm like wanting to start chopping up beats and stuff, I didn't really have a clue what I was doing, and I was looping bigger pieces than chopping it up. And frankly, I didn't really even have a good concept of chopping things up and playing them like that. I didn't see it that way. So I would just kind of wish on like a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop, you know, yeah, that's just kind of how it all started, and I would just be using the drums from whatever song it was. But when I got the ESI 32, I realized I couldn't loop for shit. All the loops just be like, they were very flawed. And so then a friend of mine suggested that his friend that he grew up with was the guy that I was looking for to make the kind of beats. So he's like, if you're not going to sample right, you're going to have to replay all these parts. And that appealed to me, and like that's where Curtis comes in, because he was able to, he was musically advanced beyond generations, and he still is. And so with my kind of like weird understanding of what we were doing, just basically sonically and like trying to dissect meanings and synthesizer riffs, you know, and that's where I was taught. I think without a doubt, one of the things that kept my music from advancing, without a doubt, and there's many, I think the big one was that I was always trying to change the music in the song. So like my verse music riffs wouldn't be exactly the same in the first verse as they would be in the second verse. It would just be a little bit of change in the third verse too. And then like the synth riff, like the hook even would change from the first hook to the second, like not sound wise, but maybe a little bit more. It just wasn't the same exact thing pasted in all three riffs. So not making it so basic and making it a little bit more puzzling made it not as popular. I mean, it didn't make people not like it, but it just didn't dumb it down enough like hit songs were. And every hit song that used to come out then, I used to just be like, oh my god, this is so simple, but I just couldn't make stuff that simple. I thought people wanted something a little bit more advanced. So like when you go listen to all those riffs on the first 2, 3 albums, fourth album, probably fifth album, like I still hadn't got it. And like my lyrics, I was still saying too many words. So yeah, I think those were hindrance for sure.